Gel printing and texture are both a lot of fun, and they are perfect together. It's Wednesday. Welcome to my studio. Getting started with 2 5x7 gel plates and Liquitex Basics, my favorite type of paint for this, silver paint. No real plan for where I'm going, but it's an invitation for you to come along and see some things that work and things that don't, and some things that are just a matter of perspective and preference. Here is a texture plate I created a little while back with Liquitex Basics modeling paste on scrap cardboard. I believe it's in one of my 100 collage papers videos, trying to use it both to remove some paint from one gel plate and apply it to the other. The application doesn't really work so well, but the removal does to create some fun texture. Continuing with a small cup I picked up at a Dollar General, and the same holds true. It's good for taking paint off, not for applying paint. There's just not enough paint picked up, and as you can see, it's actually picking some of that thin layer of silver I lay down with the excess paint from my brayer. My next color is Deep Violet, which is a gorgeous color. Brayer it out with my small brayer, and there is more paint than I need, so I decided to use the Deep Violet on the other plate with just some excess from this one. I created a bit of a gradient. As you can see on the original violet plate, I'm beginning to lift off more of that excess paint. And I love this translucent look. My next selected texture tool is an artificial flower detached from its stem. Trying to make sure I have all of the petals touching the surface sufficiently so I can pull off the paint. That came out interestingly. Let's see what happens when I take it over here. There wasn't a lot of paint on it, and I did make a faint impression, and it also included a darker center where the center of the flower pulled up more paint than the petals, enough that it applied some to the other plate. I continued with my flower pressing, if you will. As you can see, areas of my petal around the edges have a bit more paint that can actually be laid down on the other plate, so it creates a different look to the petals. This wasn't an ideal flower for this. I like ones with slightly more rigid petals, so I don't have to spend so much time and effort pressing them down. They are, however, giving an interesting look. That first flower impression on the darker plate I like particularly well. And I will double speed this because it is a little tedious and I had to deal with bent petals. So you get the picture, so let's hop ahead. I really like how these turned out, and I think instead of adding more layers as intended, I will call this one complete and pull it with a layer of silver. So there'll be a nice sheen through the purple or violet. And yes, these both had to dry completely. I put down a sheet of heavy cardstock, make sure it is rubbed down well, and use my Speedball Red Baron. Links to materials and tools I use in this video will be in the description, and you can also check out my Amazon storefront. I put a little bit of the spare silver left on my brayer on the other plate for some sheen. You may notice that I did pull off some of the purple of the flowers, and I didn't yet notice that. This is one problem. I obviously forget about too often. A thin layer of paint not only pulls back up on the brayer, it can pull up what is underneath. I added some phthalo blue and cadmium yellow medium hue and used an inexpensive scrubby sponge to create some new texture. Unfortunately, as you can see, I started pulling up all of the layers that were on the plate instead of just the top color layer. But again, I didn't totally realize how badly I had destroyed my flower layer. Both the plate with the paper and the plate with just color need to totally dry before the next step. And here is the pull of the silver and deep violet with my 3 types of texture. And I think this is pretty. With as fine as the texture is, I think it would have gotten lost with more layers. I'm adding a layer of a gloss medium to pull the other print. And yes, I got too much, so I'm spreading it out. And I will put this print on the same page as the other, pressing it down well, again with the Baron. And again, there needs to be some drying time. Since I added too much medium, it was longer than it needed to be. I had let it thoroughly dry, so it did resist, which if your print is coming up too easily, it probably needs more drying time. This did turn out interesting, but I did mostly lose the flowers, though there's one cool one there. So again, there are things that work, there are things that don't, and some things are just a matter of preference. Do you have a preference between these two? Feel free to reply in the comments. Give me a like if you enjoyed this art making session. And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on my new content and to help me grow my channel and reach more people with my art.